Hey you guys, so I decided to make a longer video for this topic, and the topic that I'm talking about is being careful with our words. I firmly believe that life and death are in the power of the tongue, and I think we forget sometimes how what we say is going to affect us, not only just consciously, but in a subconscious level. Because whether you realize it or not, whatever you say, your brain takes as a fact. You could consciously be aware that, hey, I'm just playing around. Hey, this is a joke. Oh, wait, I didn't mean it like that. But your brain will always be trying to connect the patterns. So even if you make a joke about yourself, saying, like, oh, it's just because of XYZ, your subconscious mind is going to take that fully and it's going to be implanted in the back of your head. That's why I think it's so important to be mindful. Even when we're talking to friends, it's easy to make jokes. It's easy to say things that, in the moment, we're like, oh, we're just kind of laughing about it. But we don't realize the tax is going to take on us later. Everything is connected. That's why when we speak something or when we think something, we end up speaking it, and then that's why it ends up existing. That's how with all items, down to how this pen was created. It was first an idea. So I just think it's very important to kind of be aware of every thought we have and process it. Is this a good thought or is this a bad thought? Even when I was making this video, I had a lot of doubt of, oh, what if people don't take this well? What if it just doesn't reach the right people? No one's probably going to watch it. And I realized, well, why am I listening to those thoughts? Do they serve me? And this is with anything. Let's say I give you 3 types of thoughts. So I give you one here, or just let's go down to 2. So I have one here, right? And then I'll just grab this chapstick to represent the other. So this is a good thought. This is an idea that, like, hey, maybe I could accomplish this goal. Or this, maybe you have something that you have in mind, like, oh, you know what, I want to cook this meal. But then you have this negative thought, like, oh, well, you can't do that. Or, oh, the meal's not going to taste good, right? So if you're aware that these are the thoughts you have in front of you, being aware, you could choose which thoughts you hold to yourself and which thoughts you let go. So now that I'm aware of my thinking, I could choose to be like, okay, well, these are my thoughts and I am the thinker. I am not the product of just my thoughts, because if I'm the thinker, I could choose which thoughts I want to hold on to. So I think that's why it's so good or so important to be self-aware. It's a definition we were learning in the classroom, which is called metacognition, which in simple terms just means to be thinking about your own thinking. So if we're aware of both good thoughts and bad thoughts, we could choose which ones we hold on to. Because logically, there's no point in holding on to a negative thought. We could just place that down. Throw it away if you have to. But that's why when we're aware, and it's so good, and I tell this to my students as well, it's so good to journal, to write down your thoughts, even if they're negative ones, because then you could go back in and then read your journal. And just as a professor would grade an essay, you could grade your own thoughts. And then, at least for me, this helps me to be a lot more reflective, because in the moment I lose awareness. This happens pretty often. I get emotional, I get discouraged, something that maybe a friend said that just stuck with me and they didn't mean it that way, or maybe even something that they said about themselves and they don't realize the impact it makes on me, and the people around them. When you speak negatively about yourself, people will feel it. There was this interesting study that I read about, and there's a whole research on it across the world, not just here in America, but they did this study across the world. And if you look into it, it's very interesting. It's called the rice study, where they got 3 cups of rice, they separated them into different rooms or different areas, And then from there, for 1 cup of rice, they said negative things. For the other cup of rice, they neglected. And the last cup of rice, they said positive things. And then it comes to be that the one that they said negative things molded, the one that they neglected ended up rotting away. But the rice that they said positive things fermented. And this is a very interesting study. I highly recommend looking into it. It gives you some perspective in how powerful what we say affects us, affects life, affects other people. So if you're speaking negatively, not just about yourself, but to others, it has an impact. I think it's easy to kind of reflect when it's other people, when we think certain things, but when it comes to ourselves, we are our biggest enemy. I think we don't give ourselves enough grace. At least this is me talking from my personal perspective, that I'm a lot harder on myself than I would be on a friend. When I talk to a friend, if they tell me something, or if they did something by accident or made a mistake or even offended me, I could see it from, well, you know what, maybe they had a busy week. Maybe they're going through personal issues. Maybe X, Y, Z, right? There's reasons why they're reacting the way they are. And I'm able to kind of reflect. But when it comes to myself, I don't give those excuses, which I say are excuses, but we don't give ourselves grace as we would give other people. So moving forward from this conversation, if you take anything away from this, is to be more reflective, more mindful, to use your metacognition, meaning thinking about your own thinking. Reflect, because what you're feeding into your brain is going to have an everlasting impact onto your life. So not just currently, because the seeds you plant now will grow later. And now you have to be mindful, what seeds are you planting? Are you planting seeds that are going to grow, that you're going to be able to harvest later? Or are you growing seeds that are going to ruin the rest of the harvest, weeds that are going to kill your other plants? And I think this is another point to this. It also depends on what you give attention to. That's the watering. If you give attention to a negative thought, you are watering, or you are worshiping that negative thought. I am a firm believer in Christ and have a lot of faith, and God has revealed himself to me in more than one ways. And when people hear my testimony, they usually they just feel very confused or dumbfounded, because they're like, how can you believe in God if all of this? But I didn't find God at a church. I found him through an encounter. And so that's why I have faith. And more than anything, it's so important to have faith. If you just live life with a cynical point of view, it doesn't add any value to your life. One day, we don't know which day, it all kind of comes to an end. So which way do you want to live? Do you want to live in a state of constant anxiety? I know there's so much out there, so much to be angry about. I was a very angry child growing up, but now I realize that anger was only hurting me. If this is how much we could control, why are we focusing on everything else? And I'm not saying it's not good to be aware. I think where you can be aware, where you can have conversations, when you can communicate and advocate for other people, you should. But if all we have is anger, emotions, and the only thing we're doing is feeding our ego, we're not going to meet any compromise. We're not going to grow. So I guess that's just my thought. And I hope that when you watch this video, if you do watch this video, you could be a little bit more mindful with how you carry yourself, the words that you use. Because not just communicating to yourself, but even to other people, we should be mindful with the message that we're saying. Is this message going to do any good? Is this message going to help them? Is this message going to teach them? Because if all we do is point fingers,